It's inevitable that even the best cameras will have the smallest screens, or even no screens at all. Sometimes we can't tell if our subject is in focus or if our lighting is just right. So that's why we have this today, the Viltrox DC-550. And for less than $200, it's pretty good. But should you get it? You see, I was looking for a new monitor for my Sony FX30, since the Atomos Ninja V isn't cutting it for me anymore. Amazing as it is, it's bulky with the SSD on the side, I don't record externally, and the fan noise can be pretty loud when the microphone is mounted on my camera. Fortunately, Viltrox reached out to check out and review their monitor. And they're not sponsoring this video because we're still living off that nursing paycheck. Before we talk about the display, when we get the box, our monitor comes with a hard case with a sun hood, a Sony MPF battery, shoe mount adapter, a USB-C cable, and two HDMI cables, one for micro HDMI and another for a regular HDMI. In our hands, we have a 5.5-inch screen weighing at 280 grams made of plastic. I'm not a fan of Velcro sun hoods, so I appreciate this already being here. It just lives on my monitor. The other thing that almost lives on this monitor is the monitor mount that it comes with, as it has a locking pin built in that prevents it from twisting off. We can also apply this mount on the right hand side in case you want to shoot it for vertical video as well. Low-key dislike that this is the only mount that I can use with a locking pin, since I like using my own from Falcam, which are like RE locking pins. But hey, they provide a solution for monitors that twist off, so I respect that. What about the ports on the monitor? For power options, we have the 5V USB-C in or 12V DC in. For audio, we have the 3.5mm headphone port. For display, we have the HDMI in and out. And no, 3D LUTs are not supported from the loop out here. In regards to the placement of the HDMI ports, this is a little troublesome by design because if you want to use the included monitor mount, we may not have enough clearance to actually plug in HDMI cables in both. And it doesn't really matter what angle that you keep it in. This also discourages using my favorite right angle HDMI cable from Condor Blue. So if you want to use both of these ports, maybe you have to use it at a different angle or do what I did and use a magic arm to give you enough clearance to plug in two straight HDMI cables. We also have an SD card slot at the top where we can load in our LUTs. Just drag your LUTs into a spare SD card, insert the card into your monitor, and then go into the LUT option on the first tab. This is where you'll find the user option where you can further select which LUT you'd like to use. You just have to navigate through the touchscreen arrows. I wish these were a little bit bigger. The SD card slot also serves as a means for firmware updates. How are we powering this monitor? Like other external monitors, we can power with Sony MPF batteries. Viltrox does give us a Sony 550 battery that lasts me about 45 minutes to an hour on 75% brightness. It is a bit weird though that the monitor is gray, but the battery is white. But besides this, we're able to charge this battery with USB-C if you prefer this method. I don't use this battery often enough though, as I find myself powering the monitor with a DC cable connected to my small rig V-mount battery, or with bigger Sony MP F970 batteries that'll last hours. I wish I could charge these through USB-C though, but it's all good. Now, how's it like operating the camera with the touchscreen and tactile buttons? On the left hand side, we have the on and off switch. This is handy when it comes to speed and convenience. I prefer this over a press and hold just because it gives me a better sense of time when I'm able to just know that I'm turning it on or shutting off the device. And if you're wondering about the startup time, it takes 5 to 7 seconds to power on all the way and display your image. The touchscreen works responsively. I've had no issues with it, but it's only used for displaying monitor tools. No touch to focus. If you want to do that, you have to use your on-camera monitor if it supports that. You'll also find that on the top side, we have 3 functional buttons, and in the settings menu, we've got a whole list of tools to choose from. I decided to map my first function button to focus peaking, the second one to flipping for when I use this thing in vertical mode, and false color. So what do you need to know about the display? It's a 1080 by 1920 monitor that displays DCI and UHD 4K at 24, 25, and 30 frames per second. I use this monitor when using 4K 60 in camera, and the monitor displayed 1080p 60. But when I've tried to reproduce the same effect, it just stayed 4K 30. I couldn't notice an actual difference in the display, so maybe there's a delay when it comes to updating the input and whatever data is transferring between the monitor and the camera. Either way, I saw the image and got the shot that I needed. How about the colors on the monitor? Do they reflect the same as on the camera? Yes. How's the brightness? For 1200 nits of brightness, it's on par for when it comes to something like the Atomos Ninja V, which comes in at 1000 nits of brightness. One of my first monitors that I ever bought was this Andy Cine A6 Plus, and it was great for what it was, under $200. But once I realized how dim it was at 500 nits, I was actually glad to finally get something brighter. I use monitors for shooting B-roll for these kinds of videos, and once in a while at church during service or seminars. When it comes to using this monitor, I've loved the experience thus far. The size is great, brightness and colors are beautiful, and I'm able to just do my thing and keep things in focus, especially when I use manual focus with focus peaking. But of course, I don't expect that everybody's going to use the same tools that I do. So we also got tools like waveform, grid lines, 3D LUTs, image flipping, safe area, histogram, vector scope, and a little more. Over time, when using the monitor, the fans will kick on. But when I'm operating it myself, I often don't hear it. But if you feel like this thing is actually heating up too much, then you can actually go inside the menu and change how strong you want the fan to go. But I just keep mine on low. Now before you add this to your cart, what other things should you know before buying this monitor? For me, one of the biggest downsides to this device is the monitor mounting option. One of my favorite things about the Atomos Ninja V was the fact that I could use an RE locking pin mount. It works well with my Falcom F22 plates, but the Viltrox DC-550 has its own locking pin system. I just wish I could stick to my own. But Viltrox monitor mount hasn't given me any functional issues. Another thing to note is that beyond the first tab, the fourth tab, and the settings tab up top, is that you can't see what these other icons below actually mean. You have to actually go inside your manual to figure out what these things are and just play through them. Although I do believe that this monitor is great for people starting out, you still have to hang on to your manual or at least search up to see what some of these things mean. So there's just a bit of a learning curve. But of all the things I've noticed, it's that some people are running into faulty units. My first unit was working great until it randomly stopped displaying anything at all after a few days. This is it. So Viltrox quickly replaced my unit and I haven't had any problems since. And there it is right now. So perhaps some returns may be in order or exchanges. So what's this ultimately gonna cost you? For $168, you're getting quite the value for the price. For the Atomos Ninja V alone, it could easily cost you $499 new. And if you need the SSD and the external recording, sure, by all means, go for it. You'll get a nice solid metal build and a few more monitoring controls than this could give. But if you don't need all of that, then you're better off with something more affordable. I thought I'd shoot ProRes RAW and record to the SSD, but in the end, what I actually do doesn't need it. Perhaps you'd like to stay in the Atomos family and choose something like the Atomos Shinobi, which is something similar to this without the SSD, but even that comes in at $299. It's also got a metal build, similar operation experience as the Ninja. It just doesn't provide a place for a monitoring mount pin that I like. If you can deal with that, then fine. But if you'd like to save some more money, at $198, Viltrox sells the DC-550 Pro, which has a little more display options with histograms and waveforms than the regular version that I'm using. I don't need that, and for many amateur and prosumers, this DC-550 is plenty for the price. Viltrox is actually selling it for $142 on Amazon right now, so check that out. And don't bother with 400 nits of brightness with the light version. If there's anything about a monitor that you want, it's brightness, accuracy, and a great overall viewing experience. This delivers on that for me with my Sony FX30. So I'm replacing my Atomos Ninja V for this. Click over here to see more Sony FX30 content.